road this week. I've been in the cheap seats the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. Hey, well, good to see you, my friend. How you doing? You alright? Oh, I'm doing great. I'm just gonna quickly nip upstairs to get the handout. That's good to see you. Do you know everybody? You guys saying hello to each other?
Yeah. Who are you? What's up, man? What up, B? What's up, school?
Good on. Yeah, it was pretty cheap as well.
Is that what they call a car? What do they call it? A carburetor or something?
No. It's
Carburetor, is it? Something like that.
Yeah, but that's not this one. There's the deluxe from like 73 or something, but it's not from 73. It's like a reissue.
Yeah.
It's Mexican as well, so that's why it's so cheap. So it's pretty cool.
How long have you had that for?
Like 6 years or something.
Yeah, sweet.
Yeah, I got it like I'm from Spain, so I got it back there because there was this shop that had been open forever, and there was just like China down the course. So it was just like selling it for half price.
Yeah, but you always find something. Hey, you going or not?
It's a cool tune.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's nice, isn't it? We put it indoors sometimes. Did you?
Yeah, just G, I think.
Just G, yeah. Is that right?
E flat. That's the hard bit.
And then
It's the minor.
of the tonic, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just a normal way up. He is coming this time.
The second time, it's the same thing, but it goes to the major.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, it's quite easy to get in your head, but
Awkward changes, I guess.
yeah.
Because you got, yeah, 2 5 and another, yeah. You're sounding really cool now. Who are you speaking from? Everyone. Everyone who's ever been.
The favourite one's that. That's a sweet thing.
Yeah. So what's that? Yeah. Yeah, just
It's that fucking African guy. It's just tasty.
yeah.
It's just nice.
Nice.
Those kind of little things.
Nice.
Sweet. Yeah. Have you been to a few of these sessions before then?
Yeah, this is like my third one.
Alright.
Pete taught me last year. Well, yeah, last year at ACM,
Yeah.
which is before he stopped teaching there.
Yeah.
He started coming like in November or something. Came to a couple, and then I came last week and this week.
Cool. You must come to the late one last week.
I normally come to the other one, yeah.
Alright.
Yeah, especially because I used to work till like 7:30, so like, and then I had to come to 9 PM, but now I'm not working anymore, so
Alright, cool.
so I'm going to this one.
Yeah, it's
Because
good.
then at 9 I'm a bit like,
Yeah.
after all day, like doing stuff.
Oh yeah, that's where I met Steve White. That was a long time ago.
Okay. How's that? Is that better? Yeah. Give you a bit of space there. There. Lovely. Okay, guys. Sorry for the slight delay there. That was some bad timing. Oh, I got the wrong guitar now. Can I exchange with you? Actually, no. Needs this bad boy, the Badger. The Badger. Okay, lovely, jubbly. We originally intended or set out to do today, well, we still do this, but to look at Joe Pass, and I've written down chords and soloing language. But the more I've prepped the lesson, you just realize just what a vast amount of knowledge and incredible densities in his playing. So we're gonna go do a little bit of line playing because it belongs to his general chord solo style. That belongs the sort of playing individual lines to the point where he played some tunes only in lines, really. But we're gonna focus mainly on the chord solo style, just to have some coherency. Otherwise, you just jump from one thing to another, and I think we're not going to go get the best out of it. Really, that's what I'm trying to avoid in any case. Anyway, I just want to quickly say to the guys who are watching, sorry for the late start. We're starting now. Okay. Yeah. There's so now I'm gonna go give myself a bit of luggage. It's a mix, isn't it? Because I'm always sending out the link anyway. Yeah. So I get the other side of this for everybody to watch, and then there's also now a live stream audience. Today we only get 3, but last week we had 8, and it kind of sort of it changes around every weekend, and some people just when they're there or when they can't make it, they then go for the live stream. Okay. So the first thing I want us to do is, when you know you play chord solos like quite a bit because you're into Chad Atkins, so you can't help that in a way, and he's sort of probably the most successful out of all of them. Joe Pass is a bit of a funny cat. He is born, I think, at Joseph Pasalacqua. You may have read that somewhere. Has anybody looked him up a bit? So he's a Polish Italian, and they were immigrants way back. So his dad was probably the first, I think. So they came over, his parents came over, but he's American, in a sense. And his dad used to make him practice. So every day before he went to school, he did, I don't know if it was an hour or 2 hours before school, and when he came home, the same thing again. And so Joe's a funny cat in a way that when he was invited to do any rehearsals, he used to send a dep to do the rehearsal. Because his famous line was, "I practiced enough when I was a kid," and that was it. And he would honestly do this, just have a rehearsal, a dep guitarist rehearsing, which is hilarious. Defeats totally the point of the rehearsal. And as we all know, there's probably a little bit more to it than just well, that's just it. Yeah, knowing you're not going to do the gig anyway. So what's the point of discussing anything, isn't it? It's kind of hilarious. But the chord solo style in general, and this is something I want to, we always have a little bit of a warm-up, that's how we're going to start, comes from the fact that we're able to harmonize any given melody note against any given chord. Oh, yeah, that'd be great, thank you. And that's a little bit, that's something we can practice really easily. So we can take a chord, tell me any key, any key. The key of A, yeah, we can have the key of A, and we're now going to go play an A major chord with an A on the high E string, because we always harmonize on either the E or on the B string, yeah? That's our 2 options, yeah? So we're going to go find an A on the high E string, and we're going to go play a chord, an A major, ideally because we're in jazz, an A major 7 chord maybe, yeah? So something like this. Yeah, so we get an A on the top, yeah? So now we're going to harmonize the A major scale using only an A chord. Just shuffle it, that's it. Using only an A chord. And so the next note we need is a B. We'll probably just do that, that's easy enough. Now we need an A major 7 chord with a C sharp on the top. Yeah. So now on a major chord, we don't like the perfect fourths, yeah, the D, so I'm always naturally going to Lydian, yeah, so, yeah, so, I just naturally do this. You hardly ever come into this situation where you play that, yeah? You can see in that chord here, I'm avoiding the C sharp altogether. You can put it in. Put it in here if you want to. Makes sense, yeah? So far everybody got this? So now we've got the next note is an E. That's a fairly easy one, just an... Any A shape of that chord will give you the fifth on the top. Yeah. Now we want to have a 6 on the top. The F sharp on the top here. And I want to have the major 7 on the top. Imagine this to be perfect intonation. It's a bit offensive, isn't it? I'm sorry for that. So. Cool. Okay, so now we've got literally the entire Lydian, we sort of cheated a bit, A major scale harmonized using only one single chord. Yeah. So now you could say, okay, let's start this same thing with A minor. Yeah. So just because we picked A, you know, there's no reason. Just so we actually understand that when we play a chord, that we can have under every chord any single scalar note as a top note, and in the end what we do is the opposite. Our tune will give us a melody and a chord on the top, and we have to somewhat combine the two of them at the same time, right? That's why this is why the exercise works well. So A minor, we have to first define which type of A minor we like. What do you like, a Dorian A minor, Aeolian A minor? What's your preference? Phrygian A minor? Dorian A minor, yeah? So then we're in the key of what? If A is Dorian, what's our parenting key? G, yeah? Okay, so we start A minor with an A on the top, A minor with a B on the top. And now there's plenty of versions now on A minor with a C on the top. Yeah, you can do this one. That's right. A lot of people would maybe do here quartal harmony. Yes, yeah, so that's 7 7 8 8. Cheap joke as well, I apologise. Cool, yeah? So now we need an A minor with a D on the top. It's a couple, yeah? It's a couple of options there. So you can play your, what you would know as your Hendrix shape really, just with a minor third there. Yeah, put a D in there. Does that make sense? That's 12. And then I played, you can play it with the C natural, the minor third here, but actually you have a C natural down here anyway, so you can just save yourself then, not have a double, twice the same chord in there. That's it. Now an E minor, an A minor with an E on the top, more to the point. It's really nice if you don't put the fifth in there here, again, you don't get a double fifth. Get a bit more of a sassy type of sound, it's a bit more open, more of an 11 sound. Then the 7th on the top. And then we're back home. Makes sense? So you now could take a dominant chord and so forth, yeah, and then you can take a minor 7 flat 5 chord. And that brings me now into something else. So far this is a warm-up, yeah, and us kind of thinking on chord and melody at the same time. And then Joe Pass goes one step further, he then thinks a bass note that often works, and we get to that in a moment, into contrapunctual to the top line. And that's when you get into the real spiel, really. And he was a genius, really. People underestimate a little bit how good he was. Sometimes, because you listen to it, first of all, it's effortless whenever he plays, and he's got this sort of sloppiness that makes it cool. And I always liked this about him more than about any other chord solo player. I don't think I got into anybody as much as I got into Joe Pass. The albums you want to listen to is the Virtuoso records. There was back in the day, Joe Pass was an odd cat. He was very famous, or not famous, but he had a really good career when he was really young, 18, 19 years old. He was touring with Sinatra and other guys and doing really great. And then decided, oh, that's not what I want. I want to learn bebop. And he went down, unfortunately, the heroin, heroin, so heroin, is that the drugs? Heroin? Sounds like, yes, yeah, not that you guys would know about drugs. You're half French, you're not allowed to comment on this, yeah. There's spaghetti, there's red wine, and a spliff. It's basically, so basically you're having, by the time he reaches his 30s, I think he's going the second time to prison for drug dealing. This time 4 years down in Texas somewhere. He was a reoccurring offender. He has no guitar at this point of his life, right? He's living rough. That is the sort of level he went to. Yeah, that's right. So that's pretty dire. But then in rehabilitation, when he comes out of it, it's a rehabilitation center for musicians. And because the jazz and bebop was so heavily associated with drug taking, that you actually ended up, it was almost part of the game, because they thought the concentration goes up, they can expand on their horizon, they can access different type of things. That was the belief, and so the 60s and 70s, that's well documented, and so Joe Pass didn't really do much up until he was in his early 40s, really. And then a guy called Pablo Kranz came, and he owned, Norman Kranz, and he owned Pablo Records that way around. And he sort of discovered him, and then they recorded, and this is what you really want, the Virtuoso records. And there's 1 to 3 or 1 to 4, beat me. Is it 1 to 4, 1 to 3, anybody knows? There's 3 definitely. And they're absolutely seminal. This is it. This is how, from then onwards, everybody wanted to play like this when it comes down to chord soloing. So people like Martin Taylor built their reputation on top of that. I think Martin Taylor now is probably the cleaner, technically more accomplished player. For me, still Joe Pass is the more bluesy, soulful player. And it just works for me like this. When I listen to him, he speaks to me. And I used to fall asleep to those recordings. I used to love them. The Virtuoso recordings are just so good. And he just sits down with his guitars and plays. You hear him breathing and the string scratching, and it's just him, a microphone, and that's it. Playing a couple of tunes, going home. It is outrageous. And it's some of the best guitar playing I think you can, especially of this era, you can hear with chord solo playing. Okay. So Joe Pass used to do one thing, and this is now coming back to what we were just talking about. We're talking about the fact that you have a chord, and you have to find the melody note on top of the chord. So it's good to know different chord shapes, because they allow you access left and right of them to different scalar notes. Yeah, that's kind of the key to this. However, how many of you guys actually know loads and loads of versions of a minor 7 flat 5 chord? Possibly not, isn't it? That's one of those things, you look at this and you go, no, you might be blagging your way through 3 shapes if you're lucky, right? And I'm no exception to this. And no are many other players. So now, what's the first inversion of a minor 7 flat 5 chord? So if it's D minor 7 flat 5, we just picked that one, sorry. Minor 6, well that's a minor 6 chord, yeah? So it's a minor 6 chord, a minor third up, yeah, first inversion. So I'm thinking of a D minor 7 flat 5 chord, and Joe Pass does this, and he also talks about this in his instruction and stuff. They call it superimposition, right? Clary Carlton picked this up and run a bit further with it. But they sort of thinking about minor chords where you have major triad inbuilt, and minor chords where you have major chords where you have minor chords triads inbuilt, and they also think about this in a way. Okay, so if this is minor 7 flat 5, but it's the same than a minor 6, I can do my, let's say, for D minor 7 flat 5, we're in E flat major, yeah, 7th scale degree of E flat major. So you can start here on F, on the top here, yeah, then you have your G here on the top, yeah, for this one. That's it. Then you have your A flat, yeah, on the diminished chord if you want to, or if you want to have the 7 in there. Let's play an F minor, try it. Yeah, for argument's sake. Because you got the flat 5 in there. And so forth, so you can just now roll this up. And so I'm thinking of this as a mix of D half diminished and F minor. That's all minor 7 flat 5, but I'm actually not thinking minor 7 flat 5 arpeggios. I'm thinking that first inversion, that becomes a lick because you learn that's what it is, rather than, I'm not thinking this while I'm playing, nor I believe Joe Pass does, in a way, but that's a really nice way out of it. The other way they look at minor 7 flat 5 chords, we talked about this before, and all of you blues players know this, is over the major, it's a major third, the root note is the major third of a dominant chord. That's what loads of... what you hear a lot of blues players do, yes? So this is basically the D minor, 7 flat 5, the root note is the major third of a dominant chord, yeah? So you always look at this as this one being B flat dominant, D minor 7 flat 5 becomes B flat dominant, which coincidentally belongs to the same key of E flat major 7, right? So it's all the same notes, just reinterpreted. However, I can do a lot more with B flat dominant 9 because I just know more lines, more licks. I can play. And then I play my minor 6 chord on top of it, and I got a whole bunch of licks, all based around minor 7 flat 5. And I think that's really liberating because it just gets you around the fretboard. You also think a little bit different. You're immediately looking into inversions of stuff. I mean, this one here would be, if you look into this, as a dominant 7 chord from B flat, really, because you would have to look at this as a B flat dominant 9 chord. You play an inversion, yeah, over the flat 6, yeah, of that chord. Yeah, so that the B flat is the flat 6 of the D minor 7 flat 5. So that would be, that's a thing you'd never think of if you'd have to, you know, really worry about it. But then, you know, if you then think, hang on a second, no, of course, you know, this is you know, this is now B flat dominant 7 chord. I can easily think this. Now I can sort of play little lines like this. Yeah, I can have the F minor chord, then I have the B flat, and then the F minor 6, yeah? So let's do this together. This is F minor over C, or even if I have F minor 6, actually is really what we want. Over C is really nice, a lovely voice and nice. Does that make sense? That's 10, 6, 7, no, that's 8, 6, 7, 8. 8, 6, 7, 8, makes sense? So lovely voicing, and what you really get here is in terms of my D minor 7 flat 5, 7, flat 5, root, and then you get a cheeky little 11 on the top there. Yeah. You can put actually second A flat in there if you want. I just don't like doubling of notes. Yeah. Could put the F on the top. But then you have like a B flat chord again over the 9, yeah?
Is this still acting as the...
It's all over D minor 7 flat 5, yeah? Yeah. Then we go into, that's it, B flat dominant 9. That's it. And then we go into our original minor 7 flat 5. And then we go here into F minor 6. That's it, yeah? And so you can access now also different notes. I mean, there's plenty of tunes that start on a minor 7 flat 5 chord. So now we reinterpret it. So next time you see a minor 7 flat 5 chord, play a minor third up a minor 6 chord. You all know minor 6 voicing. This one here is a nice one. There's a minor 6 9 here. So that's the one we did earlier. The where we just played it over the C.
Minor third up. So
That's it. So that's it.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, it just becomes F minor. That's it. And it always becomes that minor 6 chord. So whatever is on the whenever you invert a minor 7 flat 5 chord, it becomes a minor 6 chord in an inversion, in its first inversion.
Okay. That's weird. But what about second inversion? So if you do it instead of from the third, we do it from the third.
Yeah. So you're asking if it also becomes a different chord.
Yeah.
You can always see this as both anyway, because you're ending, you know, you're ending up with sort of well, if you put the double A flat in, you get like a major 6 chord.
Okay.
Yeah, so you get the flat 5, 7.
It's not playing the root.
It's just, yeah, he's just not playing the root. That's right.
Okay. I'm looking at that exact voicing though.
So this one is, it looks like an A minor chord, yeah. And you just put the A flat on the top. So that's 11, 10, 10, 9. 11, 10, 10. That's it.
So I think I understand. So apologies, I missed.
No, you go for it.
So the idea is that we can harmonize the scale using the same chord.
That's exactly right. Using the exact same chord.
Using the exact same chord
That's right.
throughout the fretboard, but highlighting the melody notes of the scale as extensions.
That's exactly right.
Right.
Yeah. Or chord tones, depending what it ends up to be. Yeah, exactly right.
We took a particular chord, we inverted it, and we realized that there are different voicings that we can do on it.
Yeah, and the reason for that is our own accessibility,
Of course, yeah.
and also the fact that when we think about things differently, we approach them differently. So if I think of this as an A minor all the way through, as a D minor 7 flat 5, more to the point all the way through, I highlight those notes really strongly. And when I rethink them as different chords, I give them different sounds, or naturally start a reharmonization process. So you have my bass movement, my root movement, all of this becomes more evolved. Yeah? That's quite an important bit. Everybody cool with that? Okay, lovely. So we got now a harmonic warm-up, but the other thing Joe Pass used to love to do is to imply in his lines chords. And one of my favorite lines is stolen from a chord solo he did on All the Things You Are. And he does this little thing. So it's in E major, and it basically, that's A major, that's it. E major, so I played wrong. Yeah, and so then it goes into E major, so, and then into B major, yeah? So that's basically 4, 1, 5, yeah? So 4, 1, 5, and then 1. Yeah? It's like a classical cadence really, and it's just a connecting note in the middle. And I'd argue, that's right, upper 4s each time, and I'd argue that's to do with playability more than anything. It's just the sign of the line, more than that note is particularly important. So just nice, really nicely under the fingers. Let's do this together, and actually I can hand you this out. This is the first. I'll just give you the first page first, because there's a lot of pages today. Here we go. It's the top exercise on there. That's it. So if you just hand this through, if you could kindly. And if you hand this through back, please, if you kindly could. Does everybody have one now?
Yeah, no,
You need one? There we go. You can also use the music stand if you want, if that's easier for you. Yeah, and that's just that first line. Oh no, I need one now. That's a good one. Give mine away. Right beside that. Lovely, yeah? So typical line, yeah? And I've just written this out. He doesn't actually resolve this in his tune like this, but he plays that line. And super fast, as he would do, yeah? So very often what happens is he might play a line and he might go do something in E, yeah? He might go... and then resolve it. So instead of continuing in a chordal fashion, would then continue in a linear or in an implied harmony fashion, but just playing triadic ideas here really from the scale or from the mode he's playing in. Yeah. So in this case, it's just E major, and it's just going to go continuous in E major up and down. Does that make sense? So what I want to instigate there with you is the idea of playing sequences and doing that, and also not being shy about it, because now in jazz we're always thinking about things need to be extended, or there need to be something particularly, I don't know, dense sounding harmony. But actually that's quite open harmony. But what often happens is by superimposing that over something else, that's where the density or the extensions come from, rather than, you know, you putting that in on top of something else that might be already dense. Cool. The next thing he does a lot is contrapunctual movements. He doesn't really play a counterpoint such as. The difference between a counterpoint and contrapunctual movement is very simple. In a counterpoint, each melody line needs to have its own independent rhythm and melody. While very often those lines are played where the contrapunctual movement are either bits that go left and right, so something descends, the other thing ascends. At the same time, they're played at the same rhythm. Yeah? So a really nice way of practicing this is an interesting one. Take your Dorian shape here, this one. Yeah, from G major. And we take this one, and we start here. I'll show you quickly what I've written down there, because otherwise it's not a reading exercise, it's more like a finger exercise. Yeah. So you start here, and now all I did is I just started in the middle of the fretboard and picked the Dorian thing, because we can easily visualize this. So this finger goes down one scalar note, this finger goes up. Then you continue this. This one happens to be the same note, just happens to be like this. Oh, sorry, my fault, missed the note there. And then. Yeah, so one more time. Great little exercise. It's really good for your brain, because you have to think both notes at the same time. Yeah, well done, nice one, good work. It's a bit of a, your eyelid goes a bit faster, isn't it, while you're doing it? Yeah. But you're doing great, yeah, well done. Lovely. And so now we do the reverse journey. Yeah, so if we start here. So you're ending up on the reverse journey up until you have a crossover point, and then the lower becomes the higher. It's a nice little way of practicing this. Now this in itself just highlights the ideas and also stuff you might want to do with your lines. A lot of modern players do this. They might play, you know, they might do something like this, where the line goes up in your melody, and then you play contrapunctual individual bass notes or implying harmony descending.
Do that, Autumn Leaves arrangement he does. The solo.
Yes, yeah.
He does that exactly. He does the.
We have almost that same lick, because he does almost the same lick in All the Things You Are. And I've transcribed this as so where it says example now, I've transcribed 2 examples of how he would use this. Yeah. So the first one is I've put now tap in there, because it's really important to have the finger positions for that sort of stuff. Really, even though I've realized earlier when I played to this on that blues, I've written some right garbage in some of the bits, but nothing too outrageous. You get a gist of it anyway. So here we go. So the first one, it's a contrapunctual idea, and listen to this. The A7, the A on the top, yep, is moving to be a G and then to be an F sharp. Yeah, while the bass does. Yeah, the bass moves up. Yeah, from A to C sharp, sorry, is what I should, and to D, yeah, and we go. So we get this happening. But we have this happening inside a chord, yeah, so it sounds like this. It's a chord of it now. Yeah? Does that make sense? So one more time, that's with an A on the top. Yeah, then here we've got A7 sharp, sharp 11, and then Lovely, yeah? Makes sense? It's a nice voicing, by the way, of a D major 7. It only works because it resolves. On its own, this is a horrible chord. It's an abomination. Gypsy jazz have been opener, right? That'd be like your first chord to go. Yeah. Let's all sit on that for 10 minutes. Yeah. Cool. So that's that contrapuncture. So the next bit is very much what you were saying. It's a 2-5-1 in C, and it uses the same idea. So D minor, and then for the G, and then into C. Yeah, I'll show you this one more time. So it just uses an A shape of a D minor chord, and whatever you play there really is irrelevant. And then the next bit is the important bit, yes? 3-7. That's it. And then that goes to 7-6. So in essence, you play root 3 and then 3-7. So you play the G dominant chord in a contrapunctual motion. And then your G moves to the B, moves to the C. Does that make sense? And that's a hip little line. I love that in itself. But what I want to encourage you is within that to think about having those opposite motions, but also realizing that the guitar, very often, you know, when you can't go any further there, you know, you use the next string and you realize it comes all very close together again. So you have actually quite a fair bit of yeah, you can do that's right, you can do a fair bit of things when you shift it onto a different set of strings. But it takes a bit of thinking at the beginning, so that might be something you do in isolated practice, where you take a couple of chords and you just work with them, rather than kind of thinking, oh, I'm going to use this tomorrow in my improv, and then swear to the entire gig, you know, because okay, lovely stuff. So now with this in mind, Joe Pass, and that's a really big thing, as well as you know, a lot of other guys, what they're using a lot during their playing is substitution chords. And I've printed out here, I transcribed a blues called Eric's Music Blues and an excerpt of Have You Met Miss Jones. Those are the two, just because they offer a lot of different insight. But I just want to quickly highlight something. Every single time we have a dominant chord, that dominant chord offers us, at the very least, 2 different resolutions, right? So if I have a G dominant 7 chord, the perfect cadence from G is C. But a G dominant 7 chord is also a tritone of C sharp dominant. So it can go to F sharp dominant, yeah? Does that make sense? Yeah. So it offers us those 2. So now, one other thing happens. So we can also look at this G dominant chord now. If I want to go to C, I can go via the G to C, or I can go via the C sharp, because they're the same chords. To C major, it's a tritone substitution, yeah? So, lovely. So now, you may have heard about the idea that any dominant chord is minor third related. And now, if you keep in mind what I just said about the one and the tritone substitution and the perfect cadence, those 2 both instigate a perfect cadence, but those 2 where they resolve to the 1 chord, you may remember that at one point you may have heard about chord family substitutions, right? And that means whenever I can resolve to a 1 chord in a scale, and C major, here's our tonic, our 1 chord, I can also resolve to its chord tone family, which on major is, anybody remembers what it is on major? 3 and 6, yeah? So the 1 chord, the 3 chord, and a 6 chord. The reason for that is they feature the same resolving notes. So it sounds to us still like a perfect cadence. So listen to this. I can play A7, G dominant 7, and resolve to A minor without anybody bashing an eyelid. Yeah, it's not crazy, you know, it's not like anything we're kind of going, oh wow, or whatever. It just sounds okay. Lovely. So now that also means my tritone can resolve there, because that's the same resolution function, right? So now look at this. You have a G dominant chord. Let's take a normal G dominant chord that wants to resolve perfect cadence to C. Cool. Now move this up a minor third. Now I've got the B flat chord. That B flat chord wants to resolve either to C or to A minor, because that's the tritone of E, right? So I'm back in the key of C. Okay? So now the next minor third up from B flat is the D flat. The D flat we already established as the tritone of G. Coming in here. And then I go another minor third up from D flat. I'm on the E. That wants to go to A minor anyway, yeah? So if I move dominant chords up in minor thirds, they always naturally want to go to the tonic or to the 6 anyway, which are the 2 strong tonic sounding chords in any scale, right?
Is this because when you move it up, minor third, does it mean that it's always a tritone substitution of one of the chords we can substitute?
Absolutely, yeah. It's either a tritone or it is its actual dominant. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
I think I'm with you.
And you can always look at it like it wants to go either way. So now that means that B flat, if it wants to go to A minor, also wants to go to C. So what a lot of players do is this, yeah, they play a 2-5-1. Yeah, and it sounds really beautiful, right? So you get a D minor, play this together, D minor, then you play G13. And by the way, any altered chord, any extended chord, you can just move it up. Yeah, and then we go from here to the F on the top, and the reason for that I explain in a moment. Because we do a counterpoint on the top. Not that we need that, but we... Yeah, so we have a top line melody here to go with it. Yeah, that's just a little chord lick. Yeah, so G13. Yeah. So the G13 on the top has an E, the B flat on the top has a G, then I go to the F, and while this note moves up, this note moves down. So we do that same counterpoint which we talked about earlier. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I just play the E here as my final note. I don't play the G on the top. Alistair, you want me to do this one more time?
Yeah.
So D minor.
Yeah.
Lovely.
G13.
Then G13, lovely. And now G13 goes up a minor third to B flat 13, then B flat just normal dominant.
Oh, okay, so
That's
top
it.
line down to F.
Top line down, that's exactly right. You're 100% right. Top line down to F, that's a great way of putting it. And then that resolves to the E of the C chord, yeah? You can do that same C if you want to, we did earlier, then you get a real strong resolution there. Just really like that. Then the danger is not to play the 6 on the top, otherwise you ruin the line, yeah? It's not a bad note, it just doesn't really make much sense on that line, yeah?
So particularly we go up in minor thirds from G13 to B flat, and then to, D flat. And that would be tritone substitution going to C major 7.
That's right, so now that is exactly what I would recommend you as the next line. So here,
okay, and then
so it's just moving the same 13 up now in 3 minor thirds. And then, you know, musically, you want to always have a good judgment musically. It sounds a bit shit when you do, but if you kind of, you know, if you go back into the key, and you do something with it that's musically sound, you know, your good judgment should never go overboard when you do stuff like this, yeah? Yeah? A really nice one is this. Yeah? So you play different, and that's something that's bringing us now to the next bit. You play different alterations or extensions on each one of them. So you just get a slight different sound. So let's say the first one 13, yeah? Just for argument's sake, yeah? The next one 13 flat 9. A B flat, so we're in minor third up. So you gotta cramp that flat 9 there on the top. That's a great chord, by the way, that's a chord. Yeah? Then we go another minor third up. Let's make this a sharp 5 chord.
Sharp what?
Sharp 5.
Okay.
Yeah? And I just play it as a higher. Make sharp 5 flat 9 because it's easy to play. Looks like a G dominant 7 without a G. G dominant 9 without a G, really.
Half diminished again.
Or half diminished, yeah, totally. B half diminished, that's right. Or minus 6. That's exactly right. It's really obvious in that voicing, isn't it, as well? Yeah, it's great. But till you think about it, isn't it? And then it's, could have done this years ago. Instead of trying to practice my minor 7 flat 5 shapes and forget him again, yeah. And then now here the next bit now goes up to, let's do a Hendrix chord, 7 sharp 9. Yeah, so that's 12, I don't need to show you a chord, that's the first chord I have to show you. Right, what am I doing here? Yeah. And now from here we resolve, let's say, yeah, so sharp 9, flat 9, 5, flat 7, that's of the E chord, first inversion of C major 7, yeah, which is 12, 10, 12, 13. Okay? So this is at the chord. So let's say you play a blues. Yeah, you do this. Yeah, going from the 1 to the 4 chord, you can just use that. And so you can really mix chords in there and create movement where there ain't none. Right? You just basically just reinterpret the chord because it wants to resolve. Of course, it creates an alteration. We did it in the context of a 2-5-1, so it needed a resolution. Otherwise, just a random amount of chords. Yeah. But as soon as it resolves, so you have go from a 1 to a 4 chord in a blues, or you go from a 5 to a 1 chord back, into the into your tonic. It's a free for all, really, and that's really exciting. You can do the same thing here. Yeah? So now Joe Pass goes one step further. Every dominant chord can be approached chromatically, right? So you go.
There's that video, isn't there? There's that video lesson. It's great.
It's fantastic, isn't it? Yeah. But it's it's an epiphany, isn't it? In a way, going.
When he stays on the 1, he goes to the 5 again, doesn't he? Stays on like the G, and then back to the 1 again.
That's right.
Is it that video?
Yes, it's all from that. It's the Joe Pass on guitar, what it's called, or the technique of it, or whatever it's called.
He's saying that one as well. He only sees 3 chords: dominant, major, and minor. He only thinks of 3 all the time.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Actually, really I think he starts and goes. I'm actually only thinking major and minor, isn't it? Yeah, that's how it starts. Yeah. My favorite bit is when he goes. I told you this before. I'm sure when he goes. Well, I don't kind of get how, some people play country chords. He talks about, and he tries to demonstrate open chords, and he can hardly put together 3 open chords. It sounds horrible. Then he goes, well, the way I'm thinking about it, and it just goes off on one. Goes, but he can't, you can just, it's country chords. That's what they are. All right.
No.
Okay. He's going, I don't use them. He's a great cat. Yeah.
Of course, small question. You were doing chromatic bass motion just before, after you sort of went and executed the idea of G and then obviously B flat and so on and so forth, you then went down in chromatic motion, and I didn't.
The one that went down, yeah?
Yeah, I'm really curious about that.
So, on the way down, I played C, and then C over B flat, so that's the first inversion.
Okay, yeah.
And then bass just played a cycle of a 2-5-1, yeah?
That
is D7. That is its tritone substitution.
Right.
and that's the G. So I just do one for the other. Joe Pass does this all the time. Wait, wait.
Secondary dominant, tritone substitution. Primary dominant, resolve. Okay.
Even opposite. So primary dominant, secondary, primary dominant, tritone, back home. Yeah.
Okay, now I get it now.
And that's kind of so. And this is just you're working with.
And what makes it work is the second chord. As you say, C over
B flat. I just set up that motion with that.
Yeah.
So this just sets up the downwards trend, while the other one set up the upwards motion. So this is.
You wouldn't do that. Because I was thinking, because I was in C major, there's a natural B. So.
But not in C dominant.
Ah, okay.
So C dominant is B flat, yeah? So. Yeah, you can do the same thing, approach from below, and then go into, especially with the augmented chord. Because you and it sounds like you're playing a 5-1 from below with the F sharp. And then it resolves back into the G natural, yeah. So you get the one below and the one above. The one above indicates the tritone, the one below indicates the 5-1. Really, actually, every time you approach anything with a note from below, we talked about this last time, it's a 5-1. Yeah, even if you remember we did. That's basically saying 5-1 on B flat. That's what that says all the way through. Yeah, so it's kind of an odd thing to think about this. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's what it is. As a German, it appeals very much to me. So if you look at PRT-music blues, and I'm gonna go brush over that a little bit now. You get some killer little lines and turnaround licks, but I leave you. I'm just gonna go give this 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm gonna go hand you out the last couple of bits. Like this. 4. And do this. That's a. You need all of them. You need all of them. Sorry, it's just coming in a pack.
Well, paper.
And 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Have I missed anybody? Everybody's got one.
No, I haven't got
You need one.
It's 9:30. Yeah, okay. Thank you. That's good.
Is it 3 of them in total, yeah?
4.
Oh,
Here's number 4.
Thank you.
Okay. So if you have a quick look, the one thing I want to quickly throw some attention at is where it says, "Have you met Miss Jones?" Yeah. So this is now a standard. So the blues thing we did, but you look through that blues, and I've written out, I tapped it out. You get loads of cool ideas in there. He plays like really hip. Yeah, those sort of ideas, very typical Joe Pass ideas, turnaround ideas, and mainly sort of, and it's an 8-bar blues. It's a bit of an odd thing rather than a 12-bar blues, but I think you're gonna like it a lot. The "Have you met Miss Jones" bit. What is really interesting is how his reharmonization ideas work. So for example, he would do this, yeah, F major, and then A minor is the same chord than F major, right? You agree with that? Yeah. So A minor and F major is just an inversion of each other. Yeah? You put an A on top of an F major chord, you have an A minor chord, A minor flat 6, you'd argue, yeah? So they belong to the same chord family, yeah? So he uses, the original chart only has an F major chord written there. And he sticks to that, really, by playing 1, and then playing the 5 chord, that E flat chord that should resolve to the 3, and then basically playing another F major chord, but playing in this case A minor, yeah? So the first inversion of F major is A minor, yeah? Makes sense, yeah? So you get. And then a typical thing he does is he approaches and often isolates the bass notes just chromatically, yeah? So you get. And here, exactly what we just talked about. Tom, you might like this. So he goes to an A minor chord, and then he wants to go to G minor. So he goes D7 first, then A flat 7, sharp 11, so it's D is the primary dominant, A flat is the tritone, and then back home. Just superficial motion, yeah? goes back home, and then he plays the on G minor, the melody. Yeah, so we kind of here do an opposite thing to what we did earlier. We don't find a new chord, but we find within the chord different melody notes. And then again the tritone. Yeah, the D flat is the tritone to the chord I've just written there. It's the tritone to G7, yeah, which will go to C. And then something they do all the time, it takes that same chord up an octave, yeah? Yeah, just the same chord, the same C, just put up an octave. And now here comes a counterpoint. Listen to this, yeah? It's on the top line, he plays 8 first, so the C. Then the B goes down, but he plays the C sharp on the top. Then the B flat, but he plays the D on the top, yeah? It's that same idea what we talked about earlier, that counterpoint playing, yeah? So you're having this line here. It's lovely, isn't it? And then just A7 sharp 5.
Did he always play with his fingers?
No, he didn't. No, he was a pick player. He was a normal pick player. And even when he plays fingerstyle, you often have to pick still, but doesn't use it for the entire gig.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. So it's one of those. But then later in life, he only played fingerstyle.
Yeah.
But he was a straight lines player. So when you see any 60s style, Catch Me, for example, is an album everybody should get, where he just plays it's no chord soloing on there whatsoever. I think maybe one piece, and he plays Bob on that one, like unbelievably cool. He's got the lines. He's a great straight line player. And then the chord thing is just a later thing really. But he starts his career as your box standard. Well, yeah. Okay, so now comes that little bit I was talking about, where you're ending up with a single note line. Actually, I'm playing the wrong line there. That's what's written there. Play the extra chromatic note in there. So he comes out of, so you got a C11 chord here, this chord here, which is a lovely chord by the way. It's a bit of a stretch, but not for you, but for a normal person. Yeah, doesn't have your finger. That's a C with a C on the top. That's it, yeah. Of course, no worries. I sent you the link so you catch the last bit on the link, yeah? Really good to see you, yeah? So now, it's only 5 minutes away from finishing off. Yeah. But I don't want to, you know what, it's lovely, cool. Thank you. Okay, so now here the next bit is the line, and that line is again, we're looking here at almost straightforward F major first. That's B flat major triad, yeah? That's Bob language. And then, and now back. Sorry. What am I playing here? Where am I? Oh yeah. So B flat major back, yeah? And now, what happens here is, think about those tritones again. Moving chords in minor thirds. So we want to resolve in the end to an F major, yeah? So we have here A7, which would go to D minor, the 6th chord. Remember what we did earlier? This one here is the tritone, the F sharp, where we just play the 3rd and the root. And that would go normally like this. And then he throws a little curveball in by just playing a little line from harmonic minor in there. So it goes like this. Sorry. Oh yeah, I'm right. And then the resolution is technically the A, but it's the major third of the F major 7 chord. Yeah? And then immediately goes in with a reharm, and I'm just gonna go do that next bit. So he then goes in with, and instead of doing what he did earlier, he then goes in with, bit here. You also check this out. This next line, it's just a diatonic run up, but it's so nice. It's so beautiful, so simple. This, and that just goes 2, 3, 4. Then you have the B minor chord, but in essence is a G major really, yeah, chord, which then resolves to C. Yeah, that's your dominant chord here, because this is a G major dried on the top here. It's out as a B minor 7. G9, yeah, totally G9. And then into 13, so it's a perfect cadence again. So you just have that leading note in the bass. And then the tritone substitution for the C again almost comes immediately before it goes to the F. With the same counterpoint. And those things are simple when he does that, yeah? So don't overcomplicate it or think you have to do massive counterpoint motions, but it sounds so hip when it happens, and we don't hear it, that's happening, but we hear that it's special when it's happening. Does that make sense? And so the exercises I picked for that were exactly for this. So the tritone substitutions, knowing where your melody notes are on top of it, and thinking about the counterpoint. That's the key element to his playing. Other than that, you know, I mean, of course, when you listen to him, you know, you can copy him identically, of course. But other than that, you're, you know, you're just getting a lot of creativity really within all of this. So I encourage you guys, take a tune like Have You Met Miss Jones or Misty or something like this, yeah, and just try to get 4 bars or 8 bars together, where every time you see a major chord, you know, okay, I can resolve this to 1 and to 6. So I have those 2 chords and that dominant chords. So immediately you get this range of chords every single time you see a chord. Yeah, so you say you do All of Me with a C there, yeah? So you can play, yeah, so you have A minor, then you have the B, the G dominant chord here as an altered chord. Sorry, then go back to C major, it was awful. So you have 3 notes and 3 different chords available immediately. And that sort of becomes your chord language, if that makes any sense. So you have licks like you have anywhere else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Did I strike a chord? Alright, take that one back. Guys, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for hanging in there. And sorry for the slightly late start. I'll be back on time next week. So next week